Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be a fantastic show today. As always, we have guest Tom Whitmore. It's been a long time coming for this conversation. Can't wait. We'll have him for hours 1 and 2. Then in hour 3, don't know what we'll have. Maybe a surprise, but we'll definitely have Steve Socrates, Untold, Mr. Person Mysteries, UFO Weird News, and more. Should be an awesome show. Make sure you don't go anywhere. Go get someone, as a matter of fact, and bring them into the show tonight. Let me go ahead and look and see who got the medal position tonight. Courtesy of Race Fan, it looks like we have Kitty Catty White with the gold, Race Fan with the silver, and Mel WD40 with the bronze as he lubes us up for the show. Man, fantastic. Glad you guys came in early. We do appreciate your support as well. Robert Lamont Jr. saying, hey, Rob, appreciate you coming on in. Roger Murray, September 27th, 2010 to 2025, 15th anniversary National Press Club, Washington, D.C., former U.S. Air Force officer came forward, UFO incident over nuclear bases. Very interesting, and thanks for keeping us informed, Roger Murray, as always. Who else do we have out there? We have Miss Catherine Jones, definitely here, saying hello, Mr. Rob G. and Tom. Thank you for coming on in, Miss Catherine Jones. We appreciate you showing on up here tonight to the show. Also, we have UFO. Okay. All right, UFO. Appreciate you coming on in. How are you? How are you, UFO? We hope you are well as well. Thanks for coming on into the show here tonight. And let's see. Who else do we have? Moving down the list as we get ready to start the podcast side here in just a moment. Super Crazy Movie Geek. Oh, yeah, we want retribution. That's right. That's how we get it started each and every show. D-Cypher. Hey, Rob and crew. Appreciate you coming on in, D-Cypher. Also, FAP. Hey, weirdos. Right back at you, FAP. Thanks for showing up here and getting weird with us here tonight. We got Eve in the building. Thank you for coming on in, Eve. And it looks like we are current, which is perfect because it allows me to go ahead and get ready to start the podcast side of this, which will just start right now. Why not? Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight it's going to be a fantastic show. We have UFO researcher, Majestic 12 researcher, Tom Whitmore joining us. Hours 1 and 2, fantastic conversation I'm predicting is on the way. Also, we'll have him for hours 1 and 2, and also Steve Stockton tells untold missing person mysteries, UFO weird news, and more. Underline more for hour 3. We appreciate everybody coming on in and joining us as we get ready to start the show. We're going to do it right about now. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You've just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight, we're broadcasting to you on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives absolutely free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website, yes, spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot, and so much more. We are going to have a fantastic show tonight. We have Majestic 12 and UFO researcher Tom Whitmore joining us for hours 1 and 2. I anticipate a great conversation. Been looking forward to speaking to him for a while. We also have Steve Stockton tells untold missing person mysteries for hour 3, along with UFO weird news, and then maybe a surprise or 2. So you want to make sure you stay right here. You don't go anywhere as we get ready to jump right on into the show and bring in the man of the hour, none other than Mr. Tom Whitmore. Hello, Tom. How are you this evening?
Rob G.E., good to see you, sir. Glad to be here.
Man,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're one of those names that I had on my list that I had to make sure that we did this. We met a couple years back at the Spaced Out Radio event in Reno. We met in person. And you had some really great words that night that I'll always remember, the things that we talked about. And it was just a special time. Met a lot of great people: Dave Scott, Courtney Marcassani, Miss Catherine Jones, Grand Tavius Max, long list of people, but you were definitely one of the ones that stood out. And we had to do this. So definitely glad to have you here. And I, just as with any show that we do here, especially first time interview, I like to treat it as if this is the first time anyone has seen you, and would like to start out with what led you down the windy road to UFOs.
It all started when I was 12 years old, and I was at a friend's house, and I saw a book by Donald Kehoe on the bookshelf, Flying Saucers, Serious Business, or Flying Saucers, Top Secret. And I guess I have what I call the gullibility factor, but I started reading those books and I immediately became a believer. And, going to high school and college and all that, I really wasn't active in the UFO field, but I did note when UFO news came out, and back in those days, it was newspapers and television. And when we didn't hear anything about UFOs. And then in the 1980s, I had been doing a lot of reading about the Soviet Union and about the KGB and all of their espionage and counter-espionage. And I became very interested in intelligence and espionage and so forth. And then I happened to turn on the TV just when UFO Cover Up Live show came on in 1988. And I saw, the computer graphics of the aliens and all that. And, I was immediately intrigued with it. And again, that's part of my own personal gullibility factor that I have to take into consideration. But I decided to start reading up on the UFO field, and I really did quite a bit of reading and absorbed it quickly. And around 1990 or so, I became active in the UFO field. The executive director of MUFON at the time was Walt Andrus. He was the founder, and he lived in Seguin, Texas, which is just a few miles from San Antonio, where I was living at the time. And he would come over to San Antonio and attend the meetings. And I got a state direct or a field investigator's card. I passed the field investigator's exam. I was a state section director for a while. And after a few years, Mr. Andrus asked me to serve on the board. So I came on the MUFON board around 1995. And I was on there until just a couple of years ago when I retired from it. So I've been through all of the MUFON executive directors. And at the same time, I was married and we had a child and raising a family, and I had a day job, very big day job. And I, kept up with the UFO field, and especially MJ12 as I had extra time. And then I was able to retire in 2019. And as of December of or January of this year, I'm completely, totally retired. Now, my interest in intelligence work coincided with my interest in the UFO field with the MJ12 documents. And when I saw the MJ12 documents the first time, I immediately thought that it had something to do with an intelligence agency. I thought that it probably arose from an intelligence agency. And the reason for that is that producing documents and phony documents and questionable documents is the stock and trade of intelligence agencies. And the MJ12 documents, interesting as they were, came under immediate scrutiny by the skeptics. And it did start a trend in UFO people receiving questionable documents, because when Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray received the Eisenhower briefing document and the Truman Forrestal memo, they also discovered the Kettler-Twining memorandum at the National Archives. And then Bill Moore had received a couple of other documents along the way. And then in the 1990s, the so-called SOM, SOM 1-01 manual appeared anonymously. And then a whole tranche of documents arrived on Timothy Cooper's doorstep under several iterations. So a few years later, Robert Collins, who was Condor in the UFO Cover-Up Live program, came out with his book. And then as late as 2017, another document appeared by Heather Wade, and it appeared on the internet. I refer to it as the ultra top secret document. And then there's also a fellow that's in jail, which is, I know that sounds funny, but he claims that he was being recruited by AFOSI, and he had been given a lot of information, including mentions of MJ12. So this phenomenon of documents appearing and being dangled into the UFO community started in the 80s, and it's basically going on up to the present day.
Wow. And I've looked into MJ12 somewhat. I know a little bit about it. I know there'll be people coming in who may be tuning in first time who have no clue what MJ12 is. Would you be able to kind of explain it, kind of base level explain it for someone new to the subject?
Okay. In 1947, there was what is now well-known Roswell incident in July 1947. And there was actually a newspaper story in Roswell, New Mexico, that stated that a flying saucer had been recovered. And then the next day, they came out with a retraction and said that it was only a weather balloon. And that pretty much buried the story for 30 years. In the late 80s, William Moore and his co-author, Charles Berlitz, well, it was actually William Moore and Stan Friedman, began investigating the Roswell case, and they interviewed a lot of people, over 100 people, and they became convinced that something happened and that it was probably extraterrestrial. Now, at that time, William Moore was trying to make a living as an author. He had authored a book called The Philadelphia Experiment with Charles Berlitz, and he also authored a book with Charles Berlitz called The Roswell Incident. So during the 1980s, he began to get involved with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations on Kirtland Air Force Base, and his main contact was Richard Doty. And what happened was a citizen by the name of Paul Benowitz, who lived directly adjacent to Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his business, Thunder Scientific, was right outside the gate at Kirtland Air Force Base. Well, this gentleman, Paul Benowitz, was taking photographs and films of lights that he was seeing over Kirtland, and he was also picking up electronic signals. Now, Paul Benowitz was a knowledgeable, technical person. He had a technical business, and he was a contractor to the government. But he was more than a UFO believer. He had really gone way out in his beliefs. And he approached the Air Force to try to tell them that UFOs were flying over Kirtland. And after the Air Force authorities on Kirtland Air Force Base found out about this, they decided to run a deception operation against Paul Benowitz. Now, William Moore, during that time, served as an informer. He agreed to inform on Benowitz and to inform on other UFO individuals, investigators, and on UFO groups. And he did most of that with Richard Doty. And the deal was, the reason why he did that, or he says he did it, was he was basically promised, quote unquote, inside information about what the government knew about UFOs. So a couple of very interesting documents rose during that time. But in 1984, William Moore's research partner, Jamie Chandray, found an envelope on his doorstep, and it was almost like a Russian babushka doll. There was a larger envelope, and then a smaller envelope, and then a smaller envelope inside that, which contained a canister of 35 millimeter film. So he took it to Bill Moore, and they had the film developed, or they developed it themselves. And voila, the MJ-12 documents, the Eisenhower briefing document, and the Truman-Forrestal memo. Now, the idea was the Eisenhower briefing document was purportedly a briefing of President-elect Eisenhower and to prepare him for the knowledge of what had transpired after the Roswell incident. And it explained that a craft had been recovered and bodies, and that a secret, super secure committee had been formed of 12 people, which became known as MJ-12 or the Majestic 12. And these 12 people were, some of them were scientists, some of them were generals and admirals, a couple of them were attached to the White House. So their mission was, one, to study the Roswell recovery, and two, to manage the UFO problem overall. And that's the origin of the MJ-12 legend.
Wow. Okay. And so there was a committee formed essentially to specifically deal with maybe just put the disinformation of the UFO subject, but to manage it as well, I would think for the government. Is that accurate, or was it simply for disinformation?
Well, the government and governments in general have to manage information, because if they don't, things can get out of hand. So they have to have strategies to manage the public's perception about certain issues, and that goes for politics and social issues and all that. In the case of UFOs, there was whole lot of UFO activity beginning in 1947 and into the 50s and 60s all over the United States and in other parts of the world. And the Air Force went through several iterations of projects investigating UFOs, and they eventually settled on a small a small office with several personnel that would take the reports. Now, what was kind of peculiar was that they were taking reports from the public, and they were writing them. They would immediately come up with some kind of mundane explanation. It was the moon, or it was a star, or it was a weather balloon, and whatever. And very few of the sightings were not explained under the Air Force program. But what's important is that at the same time, orders were sent out through the military system that it eventually became policy that any UFO activity reported in a military context did not go through Blue Book and was kept within the military systems. So there was a dichotomy, a bifurcation of information about UFOs. So we had, on the public side, they were managing the public perception by debunking public UFO sightings, while at the same time supposedly collecting and retaining UFO information on the military side, which is classified and which the public does not have access to.
So would you, the MJ, when I was looking into it, I was just getting the feeling that MJ-12 essentially would be what we consider is like the powers that be today, or the shadow government, the ones right behind the scenes pulling the strings. Is that essentially what this group was? And do you believe that there is still a group in place that does what they were doing initially?
Well, the Eisenhower briefing document that asserted that an MJ-12 group was formed has a lot of problems with it, and almost certainly is not authentic. It's a phony document. That's not to say that some of the information in the document isn't true or doesn't point to the truth. The crux of the matter in my mind is, if Roswell really did involve an extraterrestrial craft, then it would be very likely that, one, it would be put under super secret classified situation, and I wouldn't be surprised if a special committee was formed to manage it. But at the same time, the military basically operates in secrecy. Anything that they do that they don't want the public to know about, and that they don't want our foreign adversaries to know about, is classified. So if there was a Roswell recovery or other recoveries as well, it's possible that it was handled through certain compartmented responsibilities within the military matrix, the military and government matrix. In other words, only certain people were read in on certain aspects of it, and there may not have been an MJ-12 committee per se. Now, the thing about the whole MJ-12 idea is that we've never received official confirmation of MJ-12, even though I've talked to people and I've read enough about this that certain people have felt that they've gotten enough information that MJ-12 did exist at a certain time. But again, we're drawing a decision tree here because either MJ12 existed or it didn't. If it did exist, it either had something to do with UFOs or it possibly had nothing to do with UFOs. And there are a lot of other national security considerations that come into play, with the intelligence agencies and with the military services. For example, radar. You have nuclear warfare. Nuclear warheads, and all the things that go along with that. Even continuity of government. So it's possible that there could have been an MJ12, but it wasn't related to UFOs.
See, and I consider Roswell the cover up before the cover up, and this group potentially being set up at that time, as you said, makes sense. It makes sense to put some group together, maybe not this group per se, but a group in general. Is there any example prior to Roswell of a time where the government may have done some sort of cover up or needed some sort of background group to kind of manage something like this? To me, on the face of it, and I'm no historian, but it would seem like this UFO, the subject, and Roswell's specifically maybe began the whole idea of government cover-ups. What do you think about that?
Well, if the government, depending on how important the issue is, that there's going to be some level of secrecy, anywhere from confidential to top secret to extreme compartmentation. So during World War II and afterwards, some of the most sensitive and compartmented information in the government was the cryptography and code breaking. And at some point, the code breaking services had broken the Japanese code. And the same was true with the British. Some of the most secret and sensitive information was their attempts to break the German code. So those are two examples of things that the governments absolutely did not want the public to know about. They didn't want their adversaries to know that they were, one, getting close to breaking it, or that they were breaking the adversaries' codes. Another example is the development of the atomic bomb. Now, that did actually involve a lot of people, but there was also a lot of secrecy involved. And one of the principal people on the MJ12 list was a gentleman by the name of Vannevar Bush, who was running the Office of Scientific Research and Development during World War II and became a very famous man. And he was right below President Roosevelt, and he was above General Groves. And General Groves actually ran the Manhattan Project day to day. But Vannevar Bush, he couldn't tell anybody about what he was doing until after the bombs were dropped, and then he could be a little more straightforward about it. So that was a very large and very important program that was kept in very strict secrecy until they dropped the atomic bombs on Japan, and you can't really hide that. So, they had to come clean.
True. And he ended up being one of the people listed on the Majestic 12 document, the Vannevar Bush. And I want to go over some more of the names there to see if it made sense that they would be a part of a group like this. So we'll go ahead and do that as we get ready to go into the first break of the night with our guest, Tom Whitmore. Awesome conversation upcoming. And if you missed anything, you know what to do. Hop in the archive, guys. We'll be right back right after this break on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. See you back here in a couple minutes. All right, we are clear, crystal clear. And for everyone, I am marking your questions down. So keep posting them, put them in caps. We'll definitely pose them at the end of the second hour. And let me welcome some others that have just come on in, like Polly Rotterman. Polly, thanks for coming in. She has the right idea. Once again, guys, please be sure to hit that like and please subscribe, especially if you're here for the first time. We love to have you do it. You're catching the After Hour show, which runs, that's what this is. This show runs Saturdays and Sundays. Now at the new start time of 7 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time. So we run 7 Pacific until 10 p.m. Pacific. And so we've decided to go an hour early, hopefully for guests and viewers. Hopefully it's a little easier on you guys out there. Also, you have Dirty Filth, the Cryptic Cartoon, Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. You have UFO Max, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific. Element 115, Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, Dave Scott running the Woo Train Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. Pacific until midnight. 7 days a week, you find something going on right here at Space Out Radio. We'd appreciate a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And also, you can catch occasionally Flight 21. Dave goes out in the woods and does things that I wouldn't personally do, but that's why I'm not in the woods. And once again, I do see your questions. Thanks for keeping them coming in. Also, Mark Eddy. Mark Eddy said, Rob said I can be a guest, but I'm not allowed to broadcast from my nudist colony. Yeah, we can't have that. We can't have that, Mark Eddy, for obvious reasons. Matt Gudka stating George H.W. Bush ran the CIA under Nixon and Ford. Very knowledgeable people out there in the chat as always. We appreciate you guys bringing knowledge to the conversation as we all hopefully walk away with something we did not know before. Let me see who else did I miss coming in. Delilah, I did see your message about a potential guest, and I will definitely mark that and make sure that we definitely look into that person and see what we can do there. So thank you for that. Always looking for good conversations, guys. So if you know someone out there that would present a great conversation, let me know. The Tankella, appreciate you for coming on in, saying I've been watching for over a year now. I hope you're talking about Spaced Out Radio. And you're saying also they are underwater, above water, and in the air. Yeah, they're in all those different places for sure. We've seen them. We've had various people talk about that. And thank you for coming in. Dr. Combs, thank you for showing on up here tonight. Who else? Let me just move back a little bit here. In the chat, Ski Pix, Pix, thank you for coming on in. Appreciate showing on up. Also, Flat Six. Long time no see, buddy. Thanks for coming in. The Jaquetta, thank you for coming on into the show here tonight. Appreciate you showing on up. And UFO, having an expert on MJ12 on your show is awesome. And he's the guy. That's the guy right there. The guy you see right next to me is that guy. And is my camera frozen? It seems like it is. Let me see. Yep, it's frozen. Let me fix that real quick. We have a couple minutes to do so. Get back in MJ12. You were talking about Vannevar Bush leading into the break, who had something to do with the whole Manhattan Project. And I wanted to kind of go over some other names on that list just to see if it made sense for any of those people to be in, if you were going to form a group like that, if these were the people you would put in there. So starting off with Vannevar Bush, would that have been someone you would have thought would be on the on this Majestic 12 team?
Yes, definitely, because he was a well-known technological person. He was very involved with Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he was with the Carnegie Foundation. He was with the National Science Foundation, every elite organization that had anything to do with science and engineering. And then he was over the Office of Scientific Research and Development during World War II. So that was a big job because he was running a whole lot of different projects, or running a lot of committees that were running all these projects, everything from radar, to the atomic bomb. And he was just a very knowledgeable and experienced technologist. So he would have been a logical person to put on there. Now, at the time that the Roswell incident came about, allegedly, the recovery of a craft, it was 1947. Now, Vannevar Bush was very much in good graces with President Roosevelt. He was President Roosevelt's man for that. But when Truman came along, things weren't quite as good. And by 1947, I'm still looking into this, but it's quite possible that Bush was not on good terms with President Truman for several reasons. So maybe he wasn't put on, if the committee existed, maybe he wasn't put on it, or maybe he was put on it to shunt him aside so that Truman didn't have to deal with him very much.
Okay, then you have Roscoe H. Hillenkotter, who apparently was the former director of Central Intelligence. Would that be a person you would think would be on this list? Does it make sense?
Well, it makes sense because he was the director of Central Intelligence, and Hoyt Vandenberg was Central Intelligence, and Walter Bedell Smith was Central Intelligence. All three of those guys, were either directors of the CIA or were Central Intelligence. It morphed a little bit, after World War II. Well, after the National Security Act was passed in September, I think, 1947. So it only makes sense at the time that, someone very high up in the CIA would be involved in a committee like that. So yes, now, it's debatable as to how effective Hillenkotter was as the CIA director. He did actually go onto the board of NICAP, of the National Investigative Committee of Aerial Phenomena, which is very prominent in the 50s and 60s, with Donald Kehoe and all that. So, that's kind of an intriguing thing, even though Hillenkotter eventually got out of NICAP. But yes, he would have been logical at the time.
And so this was released, I guess, or given to the gentleman in 1984. So if we're looking at this, why would someone, if you're trying to figure out why someone would put this, why would they put these specific individuals on this list? Why wouldn't they have picked some other individuals? Why would they pick the perfect people, to be on a committee like this? And does that lean into, the people that feel like maybe the list is authentic?
Yeah, well, these people on the list, your average American in the 1980s wouldn't be familiar with most of them. And even today, if people looking at the names, they might recognize James Forrestal, or let's see, they might recognize Hoyt Vandenberg. He was became chief of staff of the Air Force. Nathan Twining. But most of the people, wouldn't be recognized today. And there are other people that you would think obviously would be on the list. For example, Albert Einstein or Robert Oppenheimer. But strange things happen because Robert Oppenheimer actually had his security clearance revoked, after a hearing, and he ran Los Alamos that produced the atomic bomb. Somebody that was on the list was Donald Menzel, a Harvard astronomer, and he was one of these Phil Klass types. He was just fanatically against the idea that UFOs could be extraterrestrial in origin, and he debunked each and every UFO case that he was aware of, and he wrote books about it. So, but he was allegedly, according to this list, a member of the MJ12 group.
And I think that's from what I briefly researched on this. It seems like that's where people are having some of the issues with him being on the list, because he was totally against UFOs being a thing. And as you said, had debunked everything that came across his desk. So a lot of people were feeling like that his involvement in it, pointed to the fact that this was clearly put together as a group to disinform the public. Do you agree with that?
Well, there are several reasons why the MJ12 documents were put into the public domain, and one of the reasons could be to put out some disinformation. And if Richard Doty is to be believed, and he was directly involved in it during the 1980s, in the 1980s, there was an extensive counterintelligence program going on in the United States. And part of that program involved UFO people and the UFO groups. And all kinds of misinformation and disinformation, and maybe some true information, was circulating in the UFO groups at that time. Now, if we look at the context, the historical context of it, it was during the Reagan administration. And Reagan was very anti-communist. He was very concerned about Soviet capabilities and intentions. At the same time, we are an open society as opposed to the Soviet Union at the time, which was a closed society. And they were running all kinds of agents over here that were collecting information for them. And they were able to glean all kinds of information open source, because we're an open society. So there was apparently, and I'm 90% sure, that there was a very widespread counterintelligence and counterespionage program going on during the 1980s. And it's highly possible that the MJ12 documents were part of that counterintelligence effort. And one could be to put out misinformation, maybe to keep the UFO people busy and researching all this stuff, and not looking at what they didn't want the public to know about. And, at the time they were developing things like the stealth aircraft, the B-2 bomber, the stealth fighter. And for a while it was very secret. It was top secret. And those are just a couple of examples. And really, we don't know. There could have been all kinds of other high-tech projects that were going on. Reagan was pushing Star Wars. So I think that there was just a really pretty elaborate counterintelligence program going on.
See, and that, I usually try to look at things and see what wasn't said, or see if, look at in an abstract outlook. When I'm looking at this, it just, as you said earlier, it seems like it would make sense that there would be some group that would be put together if we've retrieved these craft in alien bodies. We would have some sort of group. So if this wasn't the group, though, if you could think of individuals like you mentioned, you would think Oppenheimer or Einstein would be on this committee. Who else do you think would probably be a part of the real group that was overseeing the UFO secret? If you had to guess, like if you even thought about this.
Well, it's hard for me to come up with a whole lot of names, just off the top of my head, but there were all kinds of brilliant scientists involved in the Manhattan Project. And, Louis Alvarez and William Teller. And William Teller has been rumored to be, knowledgeable about the government secrets about UFOs. Just to name a couple, some of the obvious military people were already on the list. For example, Nathan Twining became the chief of staff of the Air Force. I forget his name, the fellow that ran SAC, he would have been a logical person to be on the list as well, Curtis LeMay. And then, you have admirals and Marine generals and all kinds of that on the military side. You have all kinds of lots and lots of brilliant scientists that would qualify in terms of scientific acumen, but things come into play like, is the person reliable politically? Can this person keep secrets? Could this person psychologically, assuming that we're dealing with aliens here, can the person deal with, emotionally with the reality of it? And some of these folks at the top of these governments, like in World War II and Churchill and British government and military, these people were keeping secrets. They didn't even tell their wives what they were doing. And you have to be absolutely reliable to keep these secrets. And that does come into play on who the government would rely on to do that.
And so another thing that you said that kind of resonates with me is the fact that, back then, a lot of people don't think about this. There was a time where internet didn't exist or where the information just wasn't readily available. So on the face of it, in 84, a lot of people wouldn't know who these individuals were or even have the ability maybe to go investigate to find out more about who these individuals were on the list, which just makes it even more strange, because now that we are in a time where you can vet and look through the list to see who these people are, a lot of people are saying, okay, these are the top scientists of that time. These are the top individuals in the CIA from that time. And is it just a coincidence that it ends up being a pretty solid list if you were going to put something together? And, and they didn't have the foresight in 84 to know that eventually someone would come around to realizing that these were legit names. So it's just some things for me that feel weird, that make it feel like, okay, maybe they were, and it was said as well, is that some of this, when it comes to disinformation, they're putting some truth out there along with the disinformation. So is it possible that the list of names might actually be authentic, and then maybe the rest of it is the disinformation?
Yeah, that's quite possible. Or it's possible that some of the names were involved and some weren't. And it's possible that some of the information in the text of the Eisenhower briefing document is true and some of it is not. So in terms of people knowing about this list of MJ-12 members in the 1980s, I think Bill Moore and Stanton Friedman had come across most of these names, and that you have to remember that Bill Moore was one of the most astute UFO researchers at that time, and Stanton Friedman was like a bulldog in researching things. And I think they had run across these names or were aware of the names, but that could have been one subset of a much longer list, because, like I said, you could come up with all kinds of names that would be appropriate, for this kind of activity. But at the same time, Moore and Friedman have been accused of creating the MJ-12 documents because, they admitted that they were aware of most of these names. It is interesting that a person, General, I think is Arthur Exon, he, working at Wright-Patterson, working at the flag officer level, you hear these rumors and whispers, but he stated that he had always heard of it as the unholy 13. So what does that mean? Well, if you got MJ-12 plus the president, then you got 13. Thus the unholy 13.
And it's coming at a time where, as you were saying earlier, it's President-elect Eisenhower, right? So if we're to assume this is as he's coming into presidency, and then supposedly Eisenhower has this interaction with the extraterrestrial presence. From just looking from the outside, and maybe you have more to say to that, but it just seems like, okay, it just so happens that it happens to be right before an event that a lot of people believe actually happened, and it just, does it bring more validity to it or does it not? And and I'm just asking the question. I'm not saying either way.
Well, one of the criticisms of this MJ-12 scenario and Eisenhower being briefed is that, Eisenhower was so high in the military during World War II. He was a 5-star general. He was over Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy. He was a commanding general of the European forces during World War II. And then after that, I think he had a stint as president of Columbia University, and then he ran for president. He was so high up that, one of the criticisms is that, well, wouldn't he have known about this before? Why would he need to be briefed? But I'll tell you a little story. Now, Stanton Friedman had already turned this up, and I hadn't actually read this before I did it myself, but I spent some time living in Washington, D.C., and I would go down to the Madison building at the Library of Congress and go through General Twining's papers. And I found a document in General Twining's papers that he was briefed.
Let's hold it right there. Let's pick that up on the other side of the break. We're actually going to break. Great place to leave off right there. So we're going to find out what was in the papers that Tom pulled in Washington, D.C. Guys, don't go anywhere. I appreciate you sticking around through the technical difficulty that we just had a moment ago. That will be edited out. You don't have to worry about that. Other than that, we'll be back right after the break right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we'll jump right back into that story when we come back. See you in 5 minutes, Tom.
Okay.
All right. right, welcome back, Space Out Radio After Hours Radio Show, after hour number 2. And actually, we're going to be coming back for radio break here in about 25 seconds here. So we'll be getting ready. We have your questions so far. Definitely make sure if you have any more, put them in caps. We'll be asking them at the end of this hour. And thank you, Polly Rodderman, for your awesome support of Spaced Out Radio. And once again, so the those on replay won't even know what happened tonight, but for those watching, we will be editing out that small piece. So just so you know, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show, after hour number 2. We are back in the building here with Tom Whitmore, talking Majestic 12, MJ12, and we'll be talking some more stuff here as well this hour. So make sure you don't go anywhere. And if you've missed the conversation so far, you know what you can do. We tell you all the time, you can hop in the archives because they don't cost a dime. They're absolutely free. YouTube.com/A Spaced Out Radio as we get back into the conversation. So, Tom, you were right talking about something there. I know you moved to Washington, D.C. back in September of 2019, and you talked about during that time that you had uncovered a paper from, who was it, Twining, Nathan F. Twining, U.S. Air Force General and Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you wouldn't mind continuing on with that story.
Yeah, because I found that on the Eisenhower briefing document, it's the same date that President Eisenhower received a briefing at the Pentagon. It was in November of 1952. And Stanton Friedman, I mean, to give proper credit, he had already turned this up. I just wasn't aware of it. But I'm at the Library of Congress sitting at a table, and I've got this file of Nathan Twining's personal papers, and they don't really give you the good stuff. You know, you just get whatever you get. But I'm going through this stack of papers, and I turn this up, that Eisenhower received a briefing at the Pentagon the same day that the Eisenhower briefing document is dated. And that gave me a jolt. And that's one of the great things about doing research, when you get a connection like that.
Exactly.
So whoever created these, I don't think anyone in the UFO field was capable of creating that document, the Eisenhower briefing document. I think that it was created somewhere inside the government. I have a little bit more specific information than that, but I don't want to spoil my book yet. And, but I, you know, it was a little too sophisticated to be created by just some amateur hoaxer.
So when can we expect the book?
Well, I want to do at least 20 chapters, and I'm working on chapter 4 right now, so that might tell you something.
We got time. Hey, but take your time because we know it's going to be as concise as it needs to be. So I can't wait to see that. And getting into current day MJ12, right? Because whatever group, whatever you want to call them, there is a group behind the scenes that seems to be there, and they seem to interfere with the release of information. Has to still be there today. Obviously, it's not going to be the same individuals that would have started out this group. Where do you think this group exists within the government? Is it, and do you think potentially we know some of their names, but we just don't know they're part of this group?
Well, there are always the most important and powerful people that are within the Pentagon. You know, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, you know, kind of a position. And then you have certain military people that are qualified to sit on these special access program committees. And these special access programs can be, you know, they can be deniable, where people can't even admit that the program exists. Then there are really very, like, what I call super people in the government, like Henry Kissinger. I don't know if he ever was or is, but you take someone of his stature, it's maybe someone like that is involved. There have been rumors that William Teller has been involved in this. So it's very you're very high scientists, very top scientists, very top military people in key positions, a couple of people on the political level, and the president. It's hard to say how much he knows or doesn't know, because if they don't tell the president much, or if they don't tell the president anything, the president can honestly say he doesn't know anything about it, and that provides plausible deniability. And one of the naive notions that people in the UFO field has been that the president has to know all this. Well, maybe he knows a little something, maybe he doesn't. And even though the president is nominally in charge of the executive branch and has the power, to run the executive branch, politicians come and go, but the so-called deep state, remains. And there are people, within the Pentagon and these intelligence agencies, they may decide they don't want to tell the president something or another, and they may withhold it from him. They definitely withhold it from Congress. We've seen this drama play out in these, in all the activity that's gone on since 2017. So it's really kind of a guessing game, but I do think that if they have recovered ET technology, just to use a convenient term, it's being studied under one or more special access programs. That program or programs are probably within a super secret special access program or programs that are in the Pentagon. And then, only a select few people know about what's going on. And very few, very, very few know the whole picture. Because it's, assuming it exists, it's all extremely compartmented, and you only know enough to know what you need to know, whatever it is they want you to do.
So how does, and maybe there's a simple answer to this, but how does a group like that survive undetected within the government for forever, essentially, until I guess this group would be there forever, literally, and just change out the players? But how does a group like that survive undetected within the government? Well, and one more thing, would they have I would assume they would also still have to have some sort of hierarchy even in the group that they're in. So I don't know if you could speak to any of that.
Well, let me give you an example. There are all kinds of people, not even, top level people, that work in classified programs, and they can't tell their spouse about it. Okay. James Angleton, who is head of counterintelligence in the CIA for years, he told his wife that he worked at the post office. So really keeping, these programs, in not even necessarily UFOs, but just technology and weapons and things that are classified, the people that work on these, they sign all these non-disclosure documents, and they basically sign their life away. They can't tell their wife, they can't tell anybody. And God help them if they take any document home at night, to study. I ran across one case of a lady that was prosecuted because she took a document home. It was only classified confidential, and they threw the book at her. So these people, they have the fear of God put into them, when they're read into these programs, whatever they are. And I think that's why you've seen some of the skittishness of some of the so-called whistleblowers that have, either testified or have wanted to testify and haven't testified yet because they don't feel confident that they have the kind of protections that they need, to go public with information.
And you talk about fear of God, and I've talked about this. What side of it do you mean? Do you mean threats to the person and their family, or do you think it's letting this individual know that, hey, if this information comes out, United States crumbles, everything crumbles, or do you think it's both? It's a bit of both.
It's a bit of both, because if you release classified information that you're not supposed to release, you're subject to the Espionage Act. And 10 years in jail, $10,000 fine, whatever the penalties are. And that pretty much keeps people in line. There have been people in the intelligence agencies and in the military that have disclosed egregious amounts of information to our adversaries. And sometimes they throw the book at them, and some of them are still in jail. Sometimes they don't even prosecute because they don't want the information to come out in a trial. Mm-hmm. So, it can go both ways, but the general drift of it is your average government or military employee is patriotic. They want the best for their country. They want to serve our country, and they're patriotic. So when they're told, this is very sensitive information, it affects the national security of the United States, they abide by that. Plus, they know that if they step out of line, they could get in serious, serious trouble. Now, another problem is that I think that the government uses national security as an excuse way too often.
Right.
And the American people aren't properly informed of what our government knows and what our government does. And even Congress in general doesn't know enough about what the executive branch is up to. And they use national security as an excuse.
I've always wondered, and when I talk about the whistleblowers, they know, the whistleblowers themselves know what their NDAs have within them, so they know how close to the line they can get, and kind of talk around it in certain ways. And I just see there aren't a lot of whistleblowers that will do that. They'll just kind of hide behind the NDA, and it doesn't allow you to know if this whistleblower is authentic or not. There's only been like one, I think maybe David Grush, who seems like he's kind of trying to go right up against the line of what he can and cannot say. I would think in a world where, and maybe this is just the way I think, but if, as far as NDAs go, if you have a world-changing information, and it's really just a revelation that extraterrestrials are here, and we have crash retrievals, which shouldn't, release any sort of national secret, so it should be okay. But even if it isn't, and it's under the NDA, and a person says, okay, this will change the world and potentially change the situation that we're in as human beings, if I release this information, it's going to shake things up enough to where maybe I don't get prosecuted? Or do you think there's ever a situation where that happens? Because if catastrophic disclosure is to be believed, then when the information comes out, things will be a little unsteady. And if things were to be unsteady, I just didn't see any structured way that someone would be prosecuted. And maybe that's just crazy thinking, but what do you think about that?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, what I call some of the doubters out there, their criticism is that these so-called whistleblowers that come in front of Congress aren't providing any direct proof. They're just making claims. But I'd like to ask you this. What is your definition of catastrophic disclosure? Because I hear that term bandied about quite a bit.
What I determine as catastrophic disclosure is just, I'm giving you all the facts today as we know it, everything except for the classified part, which might be government. So everything else, though, we have the bodies, we have the craft, maybe not the location on where they're being held, but I've seen them, and kind of just this world breaking story where we have this moment of, wow, everyone sees it. Wow, these things are real. We actually have these craft, and it kind of shakes things up and brings on that ontological shock that everybody talks about. That's when I say catastrophic disclosure, that's kind of what I envision.
Uh-huh. Well, that's what I would call big D disclosure.
Okay.
Like these videos that Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon showed, when all this started back in 2017. I call that small d disclosure. Big D disclosure is, authorities, either president or the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, holding a press conference and providing the proof and saying this is real.
Mhm.
And they don't do that because it would shake things up, and they don't, you don't really know what the second, third, and fourth, and fifth orders of effect would be. It's hard to predict that. And ontological shock is when what you thought was true, something fundamental, foundational in your thinking that you thought was true, you find out is not true.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's a hard thing to swallow. And you basically either become very confused and disoriented, or you just refuse to believe it. And I really think that if they held a news conference tomorrow and brought out the posters and the films and everything and tried to convince everybody that it's real, there'd be a lot of people out there that just wouldn't believe it.
True.
And things have gotten so bad, especially since Vietnam, that so many people don't trust the government now. They don't know if it's a psyop or if it's disinformation, or they're just outright lying, or it's false flag. They'll find some reason not to believe it. So, you have that possibility as well.
So if Tom Whitmore tomorrow, if Tom had the data that we needed, and he's in the government, and he is having this moral dilemma where compassion is kicking in, his love for human beings and thoughts about descendants down the line and family, and he's weighing that against the oath to keeping this NDA secret, and he's really on the fence, and he's like, you know what, I'm really thinking about coming out and saying this. And I think a group of people, especially like the ones here for sure, wouldn't allow Tom Whitmore to be prosecuted, I feel like. And I feel like a movement or a moment like that would happen for the person that ends up being the one to take that risk, that you have a groundswell of support from the citizens that wouldn't stand to see you prosecuted. I just feel like that would be the case. I don't know if the government, if things get shook up so much that the government has the wherewithal to still go through that moment, that chaotic moment, and still attempt to prosecute. Maybe they would definitely prosecute, but it just feels like who knows until someone does it, right? And will there be a person that will step forward and take that risk? Do you think there's anyone that would be willing to do it? In history, we go back and look through history, there's always that person in all these different historic moments that stood up in front of everyone and said, I'm going to be the one. And it feels like this could be one of those moments now. And I just like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that we could successfully get through a moment like that where someone has just broken the NDA? Or do you think it'll be business as usual, put them on trial, put them in jail, and let's just move on with our normal lives?
Well, here's another example. Remember Mr. Snowden, who lives in Russia now? He felt like he really needed to get this information out to the public about all of the data that the government was collecting on everybody and everything. and they had these, different technologies and programs. To do that, he was able to make a connection with a couple of journalists. He had already gone outside the United States. I think he was in Hong Kong or one of those places, Singapore, when he met with these journalists, and he was scared to death. He was going through, very careful security measures just to meet with these journalists and give them the documentation that proved what he was talking about. And it wasn't even about UFOs. It was just about data that the intelligence agencies like the NSA and them are collecting on all of us. They collect everything that we do on the internet, on the telephone, you name it.
Yeah, I just feel like
he's living in Russia, or he was. I guess he.
And see, I can understand that, and I could also understand his feeling of this is so important that I need to bring it out, because the news that he did bring out was pretty groundbreaking, but it wasn't the type of news I would risk myself for. It would have to be something that changes humanity going forward, like really changes the way that we do things on Earth. And it feels like that this extraterrestrial disclosure, if we could have like a organized moment, and I always point to like COVID, for instance, when the world was on notice, we had the world's attention for this one particular thing, and people learned from it. People changed the way that they lived behind it. And I just feel like when we have a moment to gather the world's attention or garner the world's attention, and we drop some news like that, if everyone's tuned in at the same time, then maybe we have that ability to shift kind of what it is that we're dealing with and what we're going through, as far as this machine goes, the government and the way that they hold authority over everyone. I just feel like, and maybe it's just hope in me that hopes things would change in that way. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, maybe somebody will come along and is willing to be a martyr. Put themselves out there.
I would do it, and maybe that's just, and people can say, "Oh, well, you're just saying that because you're not in that situation." But I'm really one of those guys who would really say, and stand out there and do it. Like I talk to, because I would hope that some of these people watch these shows, and I would think they do because they're involved with the subject. To kind of just think about it. Okay, there's going to be a tough, point but you would be the person to usher in a historic change for humanity. And I would want that on my name versus taking it to the grave that I sided with the government and kept my mouth closed because they wanted me to, and they had me sign a piece of paper. Right. I just couldn't die right knowing that.
And I'm sure there are other people that feel that way, but the first thing that the authorities try to do is to discredit you. Okay. And look what they did to David Grush. Okay. Sure. During the Clinton administration, there was a Secret Service guy, was on the Secret Service detail for President Clinton, and he wrote a book about President Clinton's misbehavior. We've all heard all the rumors and stories. And they come out and, this guy is Secret Service, okay? I mean, they're supposed to be extremely reliable people. He writes a book telling the truth about what Clinton did and what he acted like, and they try to discredit the guy. Okay, it happens all the time. So that's step one. If that doesn't work, then there's always the prosecution angle. But then again, they may not prosecute if they don't want information coming out in trial. And then who knows? And they can get fired. They can have their pensions taken away. They can have their promotions taken away. If they're charged with something, it's ruinously. It's financial. It's ruinous.
Yeah, we need a martyr. We're going to be back with Tom Whitmore talking more UFOs and government. What's the connection? We talked to MJ12. If you missed any of that conversation, hop in the archive. Absolutely free. We'll be back right after the break with questions and more. Stay tuned. All right, we are clear. Yeah, I know they're dirty, man. I know that they'll pull all those stops out, but and some people call it pie in the sky. And because I just hope for this perfect situation where, humanity gets to take advantage of this moment and we get to move in the right direction. Like, just so hopeful and optimistic that we get to do that. But yeah, they have things put in place that, will make most people think twice. Like me, I'm still one of those people at the end of the day that I would really be contemplating this and like, hey, it'll change. Maybe it's the end for me, but it'll change humanity going forward. And I'm basically willing to do that, especially if I'm later in life like I am now. I'm like, you know what? I've lived great life. Let's go ahead and make this happen. I'm gonna step out there and we're gonna move this needle one way or the other. And if it doesn't move the needle, it's gonna at least affect the situation enough to where someone else can step in and finish the job. But I don't know. This is me just hoping, being optimistic, Tom, and I don't know, man. We don't know how this is going to play out, but I will always be here to try to drive us down that path.
Sure. No, I understand. I mean, I want disclosure as much or more than anybody. I've been doing this for 30 years. But I'm realistic enough to know what kind of a really just monumental situation that we're up against in the executive branch. I mean, it's Congress that has passed all of these national security laws. And then on top of that, you have executive orders that the presidents have written over the years. And some executive orders are classified. You don't even know what they are. And my personal opinion is the executive branch has too much power and it's out of control. That's just my personal opinion. But, and over time, the Congress, is composed of 400 or 500 people. They'd rather just hand it over to the executive branch and let them do what they need to do to run the country. And they basically abrogated a lot of their responsibility and authority over the government, and they control the purse strings. They pass laws. They can repeal laws, and unless they change some of these national security laws, and I don't think they ever will, it's just a very, very difficult thing to get this kind of buried classified information, assuming that it exists, to come public.
All right. Well, I know we'll pick up with right after the break. Then this would be perfect place to pick up. I see everyone's comments out there, and I do appreciate you guys chiming in. That's why I love this audience and this crowd. You guys are always on top of it and adding to the conversation, which is what it's all about, right? We have conversations that move the needle, and that requires your input as well. And you guys have some great stuff that I'm reading out there. So if you have a great question, definitely pose it so we can ask it going into the final half hour here with our guest. And this has been awesome thus far. Let me see. Let me read I do have a couple of minutes. Let me read this. Kenzo, there's a new whistleblower protection bill, which would be cool. I agree with the executive branch is out of control. Congress must grow balls. I'll just say it, balls, and take the power back. Yeah, I can agree. Polly Rotterman saying, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Once again, guys, if we could take a moment, if you're on a mobile device, right under your screen, there's a little thumbs up or thumbs down button. Please just take a moment. If you're watching the show, hit one or the other. Let us know how you feel about it. And after the show, if you have something you wanted to add to the conversation, please put it in the comments. A lot of people go there to kind of, see what the audience thought, some of your thoughts on some of the things that we have spoken about. So it would be cool for you guys to do both of those things. Max Meeks saying historically the government higher ups were a bunch of Satanists. Sad but true. This too shall pass. A lot of religious undertones in the old government, right? We do understand. I understand where you're coming from, Max Meeks, and he says he's liked and subbed, and we appreciate you for doing that. My guy Tom King, Skywatcher extraordinaire. We got to get you back on soon, Tom. I'll email you. They've been calling on whistleblower protection bill for 30 years now. If or when it passes, the next decade won't mean ish. Yeah, when you get into the semantics of here's a new bill, here's a new group, I think that's all a distraction and a waste of time, period. Right? Because we're already at a point where we know what's going on, and it's literally, we literally only need a couple extra bits of information to kind of seal the deal. If we're able to sit down as experiencers and with all the data that we have and experiences, we could crack the case on our own, really. I really don't understand why we spend so much time waiting on the government. I always say if they add something to it, that's great. That's a cherry on top. But we're coming back right about now. All right. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. We are on the back half of After Hour number 2. Once again with our guest, Tom Whitmore. It's been awesome stuff here tonight. Make sure if you missed any of the conversation, jump in the free, totally free FREE archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio as we get back into the conversation and your questions here within the next 30 minutes. So I did want to, based on what we were talking about, and I wanted to know, in your mind, Tom, what would be the best way to approach for the, if you could formulate a plan, what would be the best way for us to approach imminent disclosure? If we knew it was happening, we were right on the cusp. How do you think that should transpire?
Well, a couple of things have to be extant, or they have to be in place. And one is there has to be a reason for the executive branch to want to disclose it, because basically they have nothing to gain by assuming that it's true, assuming they have the information. They have nothing to gain by disclosing it. So there would have to be a reason for them to want to do that. Now, if that exists, I think what should happen and what should logically happen is that people are kind of confidentially, and they're kind of systematically, but on a semi-confidential basis, prepared for it. In other words, they work with the churches, they work with the academic community, advising people that this is coming down. They work with the media. They prepare, all of the segments of society that would be involved in understanding what is going to be disclosed. But once you get that ball rolling, then the rumor mill is going to start, and it's going to leak out, and people are the government's wanting to disclose something. And it would, I think, quickly reach a point to where, when the snowball starts coming down the mountain and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can't stop it. So that's a problem right there. But I don't know how they can just come out cold and say XYZ is true. The people would have to be prepared, because, and the media, especially the top media moguls, Wall Street Journal and Fox News and NBC and MSNBC and all these people, they've got to, maybe some of them already believe it all, but they would have to be properly prepared for the rollout. And I think maybe a big part of it is not because the people in the know are mean and evil and they don't want to help the public. It's they can't figure out a way to do it that doesn't cause a lot of problems.
That makes sense. I could see that, and I do understand. I try to look at both sides to see why they wouldn't do it, and I've come up with a few things. But do you think the government, or the United States government more specifically, controls whether or not other governments want to come out and discuss this? So say an ally of ours that isn't currently involved in any wars anywhere, decides they want to be the ones to bring this out based on the information they have. Do you think they have to run it through the United States government first, or do you think there's a world where they get to come out and do it on their own terms?
Well, at the core, we have the Five Eyes: Britain, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We may not be in lockstep, but we're pretty much in sync. So whatever the US government's policy is toward all this, I think, there's a level of coordination there. And then the second tier, you might get into like the European countries like France, Germany, and all them. I think they're close enough allies that perhaps at a certain level, they could be convinced that it's not in their interest to disclose something, assuming they have anything to disclose. I mean, I don't know if France has any crash saucers, or Germany, or any of that. And then you have our alleged adversaries like Russia and China. If they have recovered craft, I mean, it's anybody's guess why they haven't disclosed it. Maybe they have the same reasons for not disclosing it that we have, the problems it would cause, or they don't want us to know that they have certain technology, on the shelf, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I always feel like on that aspect of it, and I always feel like with the whole spy network out there, that usually we know pretty much what they're doing or what they're going to do based on spies on the ground. And same thing for them. Spies they have here across the United States, they are kind of aware of some of the things that we're talking about or doing. So I just feel like when it comes to that we're not keeping total secrets from them, and vice versa, because of the whole espionage world out there. But what do you think is the next shoe to fall, if you had to gauge based on what has happened so far this year, or maybe even what do you hope to see next?
I would hope that one or more whistleblowers, like you said, would come out and play martyr. I just don't see the Congress seeing it as being in their interest to change any of the national security laws. And the UFO Disclosure Act has failed. And I'm not sure there's an impetus or momentum to pass a Whistleblower Protection Act, a really strong Whistleblower Protection Act. So that's left up to one or more people that are willing to, put their neck on the block. We keep hearing that there are people out there, 10, 20, 30, 40 people out there that want to talk, that want to come forward. But most people are married and they have families and, they have lives, and they don't want it all to come crashing down around their heads. I mean, that's understandable. You can't blame somebody for not wanting to destroy their life just because we want to know the truth.
True. Agree. And that's exactly the reason why I feel like it hasn't happened yet, because of that very reason right there. And shame on the government for holding things like that over whistleblowers' heads, because it's a secret that shouldn't be a secret, because you don't own the skies, you don't own what comes in to our atmosphere. And it's just crazy that they're even that we even have to have this conversation. But we had the hearing recently, and there was a video released there where it depicted a UFO in Yemen going across the ocean or sea, I would assume, and then being fired on by I assume it's our military with the Hellfire missile. When you saw that video, what was your first thought?
Well, I have a very neutral stand on these videos. I generally don't pay any attention to UFO videos. I mean, they're all over the place on Twitter and Facebook and the internet and all this. And unless, in seeing it just briefly, my personal attitude is, unless you have something that is undeniably, unambiguous, plain as day. I just don't get excited about it. Now, I'm not saying that that video is fake or that something isn't really there, but I just personally, I don't get excited unless it's unambiguous and you can't deny it's really something anomalous is going on there.
Okay, fair enough. And where do you think we can find the crash retrievals and NHI bodies? Where do you think those are currently being held, if you had to guess?
They could be anywhere. Area 51's an obvious thing that people have, been spreading rumors about for decades, but they could be anywhere. And if you talk to people that are working in classified programs, and you've probably heard this, Rob, sometimes the government hides in plain sight. They're just at any old building. There's nothing special about it from the outside. And yet the people that are working inside are working on something highly classified, or it's not even classified. Okay. And they're basically hiding in plain sight. And the construction capabilities now, I mean, you look at even like the channel, the tunnel, you can, or they have tunnels, subway tunnels that go underneath rivers. Mm-hmm. and beneath the English Channel. They have such construction capabilities. They could bury something so deep, you have no idea what's going on there. They could have stuff a mile deep that's buried so deep that you could never get to it. Or on the other hand, it could be hiding in plain sight. It could be anywhere.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that, because right here, the plane right before the SR-71, I can't recall what it was. What was the spy plane right before the SR-71?
The U-2.
U-2. So the U-2 just so happens was assembled right here in the city I'm in, Bakersfield, and it's in an unassuming warehouse here in North Bakersfield. And I just drove by there the other day because I want to see it in person. And you would never think that what took place in that building. So the hiding in plain sight, that indicates that right there. But a lot of people I don't know if you've heard this, a lot of people are saying the Plant 42 on Edwards Air Force Base is probably where they're doing the work on reverse engineering and are bringing retrieved craft and potentially NHI bodies. So I don't know if you had heard of that, but I wanted to put that out there for other researchers that might want to look into that, because I plan on going there in person and kind of just doing a broadcast from there with my friend Josh Rutledge. But with that being said, this is one question I did have for you that I wanted to look at. In your eyes, looking back, just going back your whole time researching, what would you point to as some of the pivotal moments in ufology where it moved the needle?
Well, other than the actual UFO activity, and there's plenty of literature on that. I mean, there's so much that you wouldn't even know where to start. But I think in terms of the kind of subjects that I'm concerned with, the Robertson panel report was a key thing. The Robertson panel meetings, and for people that aren't familiar with it, it was a group of scientists that met under CIA auspices, and they looked at some UFO films and, came up with some findings, all of which were negative. But the interesting thing to me was that they said that UFO groups should be monitored. Now, this is back in 1953, okay? And a particular UFO group, APRO, was specifically mentioned. And then later on in the late 70s and 80s, we get into this whole business of APRO being involved in this whole MJ-12 affair. And, that's one of the key things. In terms of UFO sightings, I think the Socorro incident was a big thing. The Socorro landing, where Lonnie Zamora saw a craft land there and take off. That seemed to be something that the government really took notice of, and that convinced Alan Hynek that something real was going on.
All right.
And then there have been other incidents like the Emmenegger saga, where Robert Emmenegger and his partner Alan Sandler, they were subjected to what I call a dangle. The government was promising to give them a film of the alleged Holloman landing, where a UFO supposedly landed. A couple of UFOs landed at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and the aliens came out, and military people met with them, and maybe there was some kind of agreement formed or something, but they dangled the possibility of giving Mr. Emmenegger this film for their documentary, which eventually became UFOs Past, Present, and Future. But then when it came right down to it, they didn't provide it. And this has happened over and over. It happened to Linda Howe, and this is the kind of thing that goes on.
Yeah, and I know when I interviewed Richard Doty, I asked him, I said, looking through your lenses, your disinformation lenses, at what's going on today, the current climate and the people involved right now, do you see the same thing going on right now? And he said, yes. He didn't really say who, but so we know that the disinformation continues, and we've seen evidence of that many times in this community. Roger Murray wanted to ask you why the U.S. government continues to lie about disclosure.
Well, assuming they have anything to disclose, they don't see it in their interest to do that, and that they have nothing to gain by disclosing it. That's why they keep doing it.
All right. Polly Rotterman is asking, Mr. Whitmore, if three-eye atlases and alien craft, what should we expect from the ETs and human sides? Who should represent Earth in your mind?
Well, I mean, if an alien craft landed on the White House lawn, so to speak, which is, the cliche, I don't think we know what to expect. And I recently was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was at Dave Marler's museum and archive there, and Linda Howe was there the same day. And she said, why don't the aliens tell us, why they're here and, what they're doing? And I said, maybe they have told us, and we don't understand. We don't understand what they're telling us. Alien means alien. That's a self-contained quality. It's something that we are neither familiar with or that we understand. And I think, no criticism of the person asking, and I appreciate the question very much, but I think we might be a little bit naive to think that we could even communicate with aliens.
I can agree. And I think they've been reaching out for some time. I've given some examples, like even the drone, if we're to believe that's anomalous, maybe that's a time where they're trying to reach out. There's some new drone thing happening now that's unfolding. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Super Crazy Movie Geek is asking, do you know if Einstein and Oppenheimer were briefed into the Roswell incident and saw the recovered craft and bodies?
I think that if the crash happened and if the recovery happened, I would give the chances that better than 50-50 that both of them were either read in or shown something.
All right. And we have Miss Catherine Jones saying, Tom, can you give us some examples of governmental disinformation since 1950?
Well, just what I just mentioned about the Emmenegger affair. Another thing that happened, and this is these are activities that occurred during what I refer to as the MJ-12 affair in the 1980s. But a document that I call the Aquarius Telex was given to Bill Moore to pass along to Paul Benowitz, and on that document there was misinformation. For example, it referred to NASA when actually the real word or the real acronym was NSA, and there was other incorrect information in it. In another instance, Linda Howe had come onto Kirtland Air Force Base. She had an appointment with Richard Doty, and Richard Doty escorted her to an office, and she was shown what I call the Carter briefing document. And the Carter briefing document contained several of the rumors that had really started floating around during the 1980s. And that document most likely is spurious. And it's not that Richard Doty was a bad guy. He provided it to her. He was under orders. He was doing what he was supposed to do. And Linda Howe was probably being observed by other people through a two-way mirror or something so that they could see her reaction. Another example is the Psalm 101 manual. That arrived anonymously under, anonymous circumstances. It was photographed. It arrived in a very similar way as the original MJ-12 documents. It arrived in a box through the mail, but in 35 millimeter film in a canister that had to be developed. Then a huge pile of documents arrived at Timothy Cooper's front door. And he had several sources who he won't disclose. He won't say who they were. And it's possible that some of this stuff was disinformation that they were sending to the Russians, and trying to fake out the Russians to make them think that we had more technology than we did. That's a possibility. I mean, I can't say that for sure. So those are several instances. Now, you're mentioning what it's like today, and I'm glad you brought that up, because with social media and the internet now, our situation has completely changed. Okay. There's just information all over the place. Misinformation, good information, bad information, mean people, nice people, and Doty has mentioned a couple of times that the Chinese and the Russians and the Koreans, they're watching all of us, and it's right there in front of them. Another thing that people may not think about it, but these UFO conferences like MUFON Symposium or Contact in the Desert, those are open to the public. Anyone can go. So someone from the government, probably on their own individual initiative, but anyone you can buy a ticket, you can attend.
Yeah. And it's crazy when you think about it, because some people that you may look up to that are speakers may actually be one of those disinformation agents you just don't know, and it just kind of has you looking at people taking the double take. And I think you should, with all these people, whistleblowers and people who appear to be ufology heroes, and you should kind of maybe look at all of them in that light. With that being said, Polly Rotterman had the final question, which was your opinion on the Scandinavian drones. So it's this latest drone incursion.
I think they're probably I think the line of thinking is probably that the Russians may have something to do with it. And tensions have been, if not escalating, they've been rising some over the last several weeks. And there's been saber rattling. I think the Russians they've run aircraft, right along airspace in some of these countries.
Here just recently, and Poland,
yeah. And there have been, drones, I think, over Poland. And there's some talk by the Europeans that they're going to start shooting them down if an unauthorized craft enter their airspace. They're not going to mess around. So I think probably they're some kind of conventional drones.
Yeah, and I feel that way right now too. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Tom, been a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you coming in and hanging with us through the hiccup. We'll do this. We have to do this again soon. Can you tell everybody where to find you real quick? We got about 10 seconds.
TomWhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. TomWhitmoreblog.wordpress.com.
All right. Once again, Tom Whitmore, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the conversation, Tom. I'll be reaching out shortly. You have a great rest of your night. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Rob. It's
All
been
right,
great.
take care.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, guys, we are jumping into the final break. See you back here in 5. Hour 3 is going to be action packed. See you soon. Hey everyone, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, after hours number 3, with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Give it up for our fantastic guest, Tom Whitmore, tonight, hours 1 and 2. If you missed any of that conversation, hop on the archive. We'll be starting back radio here in about 5 seconds, guys. And here we go. Welcome back, Spaced Out Radio, after hour number 3, with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It has been a fantastic show tonight. We talked what's the connection, UFOs and government. We talked MJ-12. We talked a whole bunch of stuff. If you missed any of this conversation, which was awesome, once again, hop in the archive because it doesn't cost you anything. It's free. Thousands of shows in there. Go ahead and watch youtube.com/@SpacedOutRadio as we get ready to jump into some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. We love that Steve Stockton is a part of the After Hours radio show, and we're just going to jump right on into it. Let's go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. We'll be talking about a case of a man, his daughter, and their dog who were missing but then rescued alive. Needless to say, it's always a great day when we can bring you a story like this, as it happens far less often than when someone goes missing and never comes back or is found, unfortunately, deceased. So here it is. A Canby man and his family rescued after being lost for a harrowing 48 hours in the wilderness. 37-year-old Peter William Monroe, his 7-year-old daughter Layla, and their dog Buck were hiking in Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest, and were going to make a family trip of it. Peter's wife, Camille, was planning on joining her husband and daughter on this trip the day after they left. Camille said she'd arrived at the family on a camping trip. When she got there, they were nowhere to be found. She assumed they had gone on a hike, but when they never returned, she set off the next morning to search for them. Camille had no luck and called police after she found Peter's truck at the Devil's Peak trailhead with his keys and Layla's stuffed animal still inside. I just want to point out here that, once again, the name Devil is involved with a place where people have gone missing in the wilderness. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, when Camille Monroe called 911 from the Devil's Peak trailhead to report that her husband Peter, their daughter Layla, and their dog Buck had been missing for at least 24 hours. Clackamas County Sheriff's Office search and rescue coordinators activated a rescue mission immediately that same afternoon. The search area featured challenging terrain, and the mission would soon involve volunteers from the CCSO SAR Trail Running Rescue Team, search canines, rope teams, and ground teams. This included support from Pacific Northwest Search and Rescue, Arms Reach and Treat Team, Mountain Wave Emergency Communications, Portland Mountain Rescue, Oregon Office of Emergency Management, 304th Rescue Squadron, 125th Special Tactics Squadron, a Special Forces Unit of the 142nd Fighter Wing of the United States Air National Guard, and the Hood River Sheriff's Office Air Unit. Over 50 searchers ended up participating in the mission. Most of these volunteers sprung into action immediately upon being called and were eager and willing to help out in any way they could. Searchers worked through the night with additional resources from the 304th Rescue Squadron and the 125th Special Tactics Squadron, deploying to the field at about 2 o'clock in the morning to assist the tired crews who had worked through the night. At approximately 6 a.m. on Thursday, September 3rd, searchers from the 304th Rescue Squadron were able to make voice contact with Peter. It took at least another hour for them to reach the trio, though, due to the harsh and difficult terrain. Peter, Layla, and Buck were found northwest of the Kinza Lake trailhead in a ravine that was located about 1.25 miles and approximately 1,200 feet below where they had first set out for their hike on Tuesday. Peter was injured and unable to walk. Lila and Buck were in good spirits but needed assistance. Crews quickly began to assess and provide first aid. They learned Peter had become lost and had been moving downhill to where he thought a trail was located, injuring himself in the process. After stabilizing Peter, crews began the exhausting process of carrying him out of this remote location through the difficult terrain. They reached a waiting medical crew on Still Creek Road, about 7 miles from Highway 26, near Rhododendron, at about 12:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, September 3rd. Peter, Layla, and Buck were lost and stuck in the wilderness for over 48 hours without supplies. This means no water and no food. It's an absolute miracle they survived relatively unharmed. Peter was transported to an area hospital for his injuries. Buck and Layla were reunited with the rest of the family and were getting some much-needed rest. After his rescue and hospitalization, Peter spoke to reporters from the back of an ambulance and made this statement. "I just want to thank all the first responders and everybody else that helped get me out of that hole. I don't think I would have made it out, especially without any other adults, so I owe you guys my life. Thank you." Search crews want to offer special thanks to a nearby construction crew working on the Still Creek Bridge repair project. The construction crew sped up the rescue operation by using a crane to hoist the Special Forces vehicles over the river. Authorities mentioned that without this help, it would have taken an estimated additional 4 hours to take the longer route to reach the location. This was definitely a dramatic and dangerous rescue operation, and the crews and volunteers who participated are true heroes. We're glad to report that Peter, Layla, and even Buck are all fine and have suffered no long-term injuries or lasting effects from this terrifying ordeal they endured when out for a simple family hike. It just goes to show you, please be careful out there. Whether alone or with a group or even with your pet, no one is immune to the rough and tumble ways of Mother Nature. Always be prepared. Peter and his family were extremely lucky to have survived and been rescued. Next up, we bring you the story of a mother and son who became lost in the Colorado wilderness. Now, it's never a fun time when you're lost in the wilderness. Doesn't matter what age you are, the unknown and mysterious depths of the woods, even the most well-traveled and scenic tourist spots can become deadly and your situation desperate really fast if you don't know where you are once you're off the main trails and clearly marked paths. If you don't know where you are, then how can you possibly know where it is you are going? Once this realization sets in, it must be very hard to suppress the rising fear and panic that surely sets in the moment you think to yourself, I'm lost out here. Will anyone be able to find me? Usually in these areas where we go to camp and hike, cell phone service is completely unreliable and spotty even on the best of days. Now imagine all this and add to it being lost with one of your children. This is exactly what happened to a mother in Colorado and her 14-year-old son when they decided to go for a day hike and spend some time together on Thursday, August 5th, 2021. It was a typical day for the pair, spending some time together in the great outdoors, taking in the beautiful scenery and clean, fresh air. Just trying to get in some outdoor activities and exercise opportunities before summer ends and the autumn chill hits the air. The pair had somehow gotten turned around and lost and ended up having to spend the entire night in the freezing cold, extremely dark, and predator-infested woodlands of the backcountry of the Flat Tops Wilderness area between Trappers Lake and the Stillwater Reservoir. The Stillwater Reservoir is a scenic alpine lake located southwest of Yampa, Colorado. The reservoir rests at 10,259 feet in northeast Garfield County. It offers excellent opportunities for fishing, hiking, and camping in the surrounding White River and Route National Forest. The as yet unnamed mother and son were reported missing by the woman's husband and the young kid's father when they failed to return home by 11 p.m. that same night. The Garfield County Sheriff's Emergency Operations Division took the report and immediately began a full search and rescue operation to try and locate the pair before it was too late. The husband went out himself to go and find his wife and son and met some people known only as two Good Samaritans along the way. The three continued out together on foot to try and locate the man's missing family. Garfield County Search and Rescue sent out an alert shortly after midnight for all available members to meet at the operations barn in Rifle at 5 a.m. Friday, which was the following morning. The two had been missing nearly 24 hours at this point, and the search was fast becoming desperate. Cell service in the area is very limited. However, they were able to receive a ping from one cell phone to assist in finding approximate location coordinates of the hikers, the press release stated. Garfield County Sheriff's Office, along with Garfield County Search and Rescue, coordinated their rescue efforts with the Routt County Sheriff's Office and their search and rescue team to begin at dawn. Garfield County S&R deployed at Trappers Lake, with Routt County beginning a ground search farther east from Stillwater Reservoir. A care flight was requested to join in the search with their helicopters to provide any necessary medical support and transport when the hikers were located, the release further stated. It took just about an hour and a half, but eventually, at around 7:30 a.m. that same Friday morning, it was reported by the father that he and the Good Samaritans had a visual on the missing duo. The mother was extremely dehydrated and quite hypothermic, but would make a full recovery. Luckily, the 14-year-old son had no injuries and was able to walk out to the Stillwater Reservoir with his father and one of the other Samaritans completely unharmed. The other Good Samaritan, who was helping the father in his desperate search, twisted and injured his knee. He was taken by ground transport with the unnamed mother to a hospital, which was about a 2-hour drive away. As we said, the mom was hypothermic and dehydrated, but would go on to make a full recovery. All parties would be safely reunited at Stillwater Reservoir, the release stated. This was another successful mission of the volunteers of Garfield Search and Rescue. These volunteers are called upon regularly to assist in various rescues from water to climbing accidents. They assist in the rescue of lost or injured hikers, travelers, or other outdoor enthusiasts in the backcountry. Luckily, this story has a happy ending where all parties involved, including those who were initially injured, made full recoveries and made it home safely. All too often, though, this is not the case, and the decisive action of the husband and swift measures taken by the search and rescue crews in Garfield County, Colorado, definitely contributed to this idyllic outcome. Please, no matter if it's a day hike or a family camping trip, be sure and carry a personal locator beacon. Always pack extra clothes, food, and water in case the unthinkable happens. All too often, the outcome of these day hikes gone wrong aren't as fortunate, and people can even end up losing their lives. Next up, 24-year-old Gina Allen and 28-year-old Brandon Day, both from Dallas, Texas, were in California for a financial convention, and they decided to go for a day hike together on some trails just west of Palm Springs. The pair ended up lost when they wandered off the trails and ended up not being able to find their way out. This is when their simple hike turned into a life or death ordeal, and the thing that saved them is what makes this story not only very special, but also quite bizarre, to say the least. When the couple first realized they were lost, Brandon said he wasn't too worried because at that point he could still hear voices, so he assumed there were people around, most likely on the trails they were trying so hard to find their way back to. He said he kept thinking the trail would be right around this boulder. However, the trail never materialized, and the couple knew they had to do something. Night was closing in on them, and they had not come prepared for more than a simple day hike to take in the sights. They didn't even bring their cell phones, let alone food or spare clothing. They were only wearing light jackets, and they were completely helpless and at the mercy of the woods. They went into a cave and spent the night freezing and scared, starving and terrified of what may come and find them when they closed their eyes to sleep. If sleep would come, they were so cold and afraid. The next morning, they decided to do something they had learned somewhere at some time and that they had somehow been able to retain. They started following a boulder-strewn path downhill, struggling to stay with the stream running downhill right with them. That night, they were frequently awakened, but not by the animals they so feared, but by their own shivering. Brandon stated, "The mantra for the day was, we're going to get out of here. We're not going to die. It's not our time." By the third day, Gina Allen was very weak and didn't even know how much longer she could continue on like this. She said she couldn't stop thinking the worst and that she was praying a lot. Eventually, they discovered a campsite. It was in a dead-end gorge, but they decided to look and see if there was anyone around. They found a foam sleeping mat, razors, a poncho which was thrown into some branches so they could make some shade if they needed to, a spoon, a pair of tennis shoes, and a backpack. They were relieved and elated, thinking for sure whoever owned this gear would be able to show them to safety. However, that elation turned to fear when they realized this campsite was deserted. Among the many items were a corroded flashlight and a broken radio. They soon discovered that the gear was all soaking wet. Nobody was going to help them. They searched through the gear for more supplies and came up with an identification belonging to a 60-year-old retired social worker from Virginia named John Donovan. The couple found a journal of sorts written on some sketch paper and the backs of maps and realized that John Donovan himself had been lost. As he wrote these little notes, he was a man who had lost all hope of ever getting out of the woods or being rescued, at least not while alive. In John's backpack, Gina and Brandon found a warm sweater. She immediately put it on to keep warm and stop shivering. He was able to put on some dry socks found in the pack to help him warm up, and they even found dry matches to be able to start a fire. They tried with a small fire to signal a nearby helicopter, but nobody seemed to have seen the signal, and they were still completely stranded. But, at least for now, thanks to John Donovan, they had hope for survival in the few supplies he had left behind. Brandon Day said of the journal, his last journal entry was 1 year to the day we found it, which was eerie. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew to come looking for him. So he was preparing for the end. We were looking at the words of a man who was passing. The couple later learned a little more about the man who had inadvertently and unintentionally saved their lives. John Donovan was an experienced hiker who was following the 2,650-mile Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from Southern California right up to the Canadian border. On May 2nd, 2005, when he vanished, the conditions were very icy, and he must have lost his way or become too injured to keep going. The next day, they came to a large culvert, which was completely covered with dried leaves, vines, and other type of foliage. With the strike of just one more of those matches they found in John Donovan's backpack, they were able to light up an entire acre or two of forest, create a huge smoke signal, and finally get the attention of a helicopter crew who rescued them. Miraculously, when they were taken to the nearest hospital, they had only sustained minor bruises and some blisters. Brandon Day stated, "We feel great. We're thankful. We feel like we've been given a second chance." Was it coincidence, fate, synchronicity, destiny that they found his supplies 1 year to the day that he had written his last journal entry? We may never know. But it's always good when we get to see something wonderful like hope and the gift of getting to continue living, coming out of something so tragic as a very experienced hiker losing his way and never being seen again. John Donovan's remains were eventually discovered by a 20-foot waterfall in a pool amid birches and mossy green rocks in May of 2006.
Wow. Wow. I'm always wow at the end of one of those stories. Definitely want to thank Steve Stockton, Tales Untold Mr. Person Mysteries. We had some good ones in there where people actually were found, and that's always a good thing. Some of them were not found in the currently able to continue to live state, I'll say. You can read between the lines on that. Well, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into our next segment here, and welcome back someone has been gone for a little while. I think you might know who it is. Everybody, welcome back, Mr. Drew. Thank you.
Monster! Come here, I'm gonna eat you! Get in my belly! Get down in the north! Get down north! Do it! That man's gone north! You're a monster!
Yes. Pleasantly surprised to be joined back by the one and the only Drewski Banky. How you doing, sir? How you been? Long time, man. How you been? Let's catch up. How you been?
What's going on, people?
Man, and it sounds like you're far away, so I don't know if you're talking through that mic or not. I think you might be talking through
Let's see.
computer mic. It's okay. It's first day back. You know how it goes. You can fix that. But
Working out the kinks.
How about now?
there you go, sir. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Back in the building. Fill us in. Just fill us in.
In a different building. Look at.
Yeah. I'm loving it. I saw some previews
building.
on your page, man. So I was like, I kind of knew what to expect, but I'm like, okay. We're just glad to have you back, man. It's been all summer, man. We haven't seen you. We seen you last, I think, July 5th. We did a show, and that was just to come back. And you were out since June. We're in September now. Yeah, the whole summer, man. We're glad to have you back.
July. Yeah. It's been busy. It's been manifestations real. Like it's real. It's real.
What has happened, man? What has transpired over? I know you guys were doing the move, and so how's all that turned out? Let's
It's been a long, drawn out process. It's been a lot longer than what we thought it was going to be, and oh man, just twists and turns, and did a few ceremonies, some sweat lodges, and other ceremonies. Another UWIPI ceremony I'd done with a chief from up in Pine that lives up in Pine Ridge on the res. He's a Sundance chief, and I've agreed to go Sundancing next year. So again, up there. So it's going to be a new place to Sundance, and it feels right. It feels like it's time to go back. He's the chief of Ghost Nation. So Winoogie Nation, Winoogie Yalyate, which is Ghost Nation, translates to Ghost Nation. So they're basically a lot of medicine people and stuff. So it seems like the right time, and there was a lot of synchronicities that lined up at that time. But man, the move has just been crazy. You know, we just finally closed on the house a couple days earlier this week. Early in the week we closed on our house, and then like a day or two later we closed on this house. So we're officially here in Crestone and everything. So part of the POA again.
Nice.
So
I'm catching like inside of a spaceship, the TP spaceship vibes, man. What am I getting? I feel like a TP is kind of what it feels like.
So this new, I'm on ground level now. I'm not on the I'm not above a barn anymore. But this whole house is a straw bale house. So these walls, behind these walls right here, this is like a concrete mixture that's over top of it. But behind here is straw bales. So, and it's all like packed in, and it's got other stuff in there too. Like there's wood framing and metal and stuff like that. But the majority, this is for the insulation for this house. It's made out of straw bale. And this particular room is like an octagonal, kind of like a permanent yurt type of. So it's all octagonal. If you look up, and people can look up pictures on my socials and stuff, and give me some love. But I posted pictures throughout the process of moving of this office, what it looks like above me. You can kind of get a glimpse, and it's like that. It's let's see. Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3. It's 6-sided, 8-sided, 7-sided. I don't know, but it's kind of like a pyramid shape, and yeah, it's kind of like the windows and everything. It's different.
It is. I'm getting the angular aspect. It feels for me just looking like this is what I would imagine. I've never been inside a teepee, but I'm feeling like this is kind of what we be doing inside of maybe one of these ceremonies in the teepee, getting ready to get it in. So it's a cool vibe that you got going on there, and it's awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you guys are finally settled, because now you can kind of relax and kind of get back to your business and all the things that you guys do. And we'll be talking more about that, because I know we're going into the break here in about 20 seconds here. So why don't we do this? We'll talk more over the break, and then we'll be back on the other side of the break with Drew Banky and the After Hours wrap up and the Tom Whitmore interview that we just conducted, and just how awesome Tom Whitmore is. So don't worry about anything, guys. We're going to be back action packed, half hour coming up next. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, and then back in the building, Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap up. We'll see you guys right after the break. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are clear. We are clear. Polly Rotterman saying, "Good to see you, Drew." Let's see. Kitty Catty Whack. Hey, Drew.
Hey, kitty cat.
Yeah.
Hey, Polly. Everybody, good to be back. Good to be back. Man, I was sweating too. It was trying to get this Wi-Fi figured out. It's a much bigger house. I'm a lot closer to the main router than I was before, but I don't know what it is about these type of houses, the concrete straw bale type thing. It's hard for signals to get through, so I gotta have my booster. I got my booster down in the hallway here that goes to the greenhouse into the main house. So I don't have to go outside anymore, which is kind of cool. Kind of not, but kind of cool. I don't get to have to step outside and look at stars at the end of the night. But any hoozle.
Are you still in the middle of nowhere like you were before?
No, we are in Crestone. So this is the house I talked about. We went and looked at. The big light appeared in the sky after looking at it, and we looked back on everything, and I think that happened like at the end of April. And and we just closed on all that. There was a lot of ups and downs. We lost it at one point. The other sale fell through. Like it was a whole thing, and then we ended up getting it for less because the guy felt bad. So we ended up getting another discount on it. So
less is always good. Less is always good. I'm glad to hear it. As long as everything is okay, as long as everything's settled and that family's settled, everything's feeling good, then we're good. We're good.
Oh man, me and Ella was talking the other day. We was sitting out at a table and we was looking around, and we just kept saying to each other, it's like manifestation's real. We definitely manifested this. And I was like, if I look back on different parts of my life, like everything's a ceremony, everything's a ceremony. If you can dissect it, and I wish everybody could see the world the way I do. I really do. I say that in all humbleness, but I really wish people could see it the way I do, because I just dissect it and see the spirituality and it through it all, maybe not in the process. Through that 4-month process, it was ups and downs, all types of emotions, back and forth. We was looking to buy in Hawaii at one point, because this fell through. Our first sale fell through. Our first buyer fell through. We had to find another buyer, but that second buyer was really quick to do it. So, but me and Ella was talking the other day, like it was like the day before yesterday. We were sitting down having coffee at the kitchen table, and I was like, man, this has been one of them. I feel more confident than ever just in my faith of what I believe in, of the higher power and the universe at work, and the power of manifestation, and the power of gratitude, and all these things that I talk about all the time. And it's these past 3-4 months has been a testimony to all that. It's just been more and more, and all the spiritual things that's happening, not running into Bear Cross, but running across a podcast he talked on, reaching out to him. And then, a couple weeks later, I'm sitting in a sweat lodge with him. And then I go into a UWIPI ceremony, and, it's just, tons of things happen around that too. Like a bunch of synchronicities happen around that. So it's there's a lot of more exciting news that I can't share right now with all that, but it's trust me, it's gonna it's gonna blow your guys' mind when it all comes out, man.
Good. We need that energy back in the building, man. I was just thinking about Debs the other day, and I know she reached out, and I'm like, man, it's about time. It's about time. So we'll have to set Debs up, get her on the show. We need to tap back into consciousness real quick, and and especially with the times that we're in, it's definitely obviously crazy is heck right now, and we just need some more of that, right? We need that energy, that great good energy coming in here. And before we go back, because we got 10 seconds left, and I guess we'll talk about this maybe after the show, but your friend Chris Bledsoe was in the news recently, and we'll talk about why in a moment. Here we go. All right, welcome back. Space Out Radio After Hour number 3, back half of the 3rd hour. And we have been joined back with our guy, Drew Banky, with the After Hours wrap up. He's back in the building. He's feeling good. He's feeling good. We're feeling good. And I hope you're feeling good too. Hope you enjoyed the show so far. If you missed any of it, as I always say, it's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's in the archive, youtube.com/at Spaced Out Radio, as we get ready to bring this thing home. So after hours wrap up, you come in on a night where this is first time talking to Tom Whitmore. Tom Whitmore is a really, a guy who is super laser focused on the facts and the specifics. Doesn't get into too much of the wooey stuff, which I can appreciate. And I don't know how much you were able to tune into tonight, especially with the technical difficulties that we had. But did you have anything that stood out to you? Anything that you wanted to point to or speak to?
No, just talking about disclosure, and I think it's we always talk about disclosure, and this is always it's always a topic that's on the front of our palate, but his viewpoints on it could be major news right now. It could come out, and there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't even look at it, and I agree with that too. Like there's the shock factor is kind of gone with all this stuff in a way. I don't know if I would call it the shock factor, but it's people almost got to witness it for themselves. And I've been saying this all along. This is kind of this disclosure thing. It could be put over the airways, and you're going to have a large percentage of people talk about, that's probably AI, or, that's probably generated on a computer or something like that. And they wouldn't believe it unless they experience it face to face, like firsthand. And I think, and I agree with them. I caught that part of it. I did miss the very first part of it because I was dealing with my own technical difficulties with Wi-Fi and everything. Then as soon as I got tuned in, I saw you had it as well. So maybe it's not maybe it's not a coincidence.
I try not to fall down that path when it comes to interruptions with service, but you kind of got to think, right? I mean, if it happens during particular conversations, and we're talking MJ12, and we've really never talked about that much here on the show, but getting into talking about government officials and getting into the details, and then all of a sudden we have a catastrophic stream crash, which doesn't happen. I've never really had that happen. Yeah. So that was just kind of strange. And you just have to think, I mean, you got to think, who's watching, and if someone would target. I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, they're watching me. Helicopters are following me. I don't want to be that guy, right? Yeah. But at the same time, you just it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I know that I'm not. I don't really think in my heart of hearts. I don't think that's anything nefarious on my end. It's I'm getting my system figured out and figuring out what I need to do to get a good signal back here, and I've finally figured that out after the show started. But it could they could be listening to us. I think they listen to everything. I asked, speaking, you mentioned Chris earlier on the break, but I was speaking to Chris and I was like, I was asking about if the government is looking into native prophecies or if they're interested in native prophecies. He said they're highly interested in native prophecies and anything, anytime there's a conversation that talks about native prophecies, they're listening. And so we might have just triggered them to listen if they weren't already. But that being said, he ended that with they are listening to everything. Everything.
Well, I'm going to
Everything.
toot our own horn and say they should be listening to this show because this is the After Hours radio show where we have conversations that move the needle. So if you were going to listen to one, I would hope that it would be this one. And with that being said, I mean, because you've been, and this is almost, I can almost sit here and interview you for the next few minutes here because there's been things that have happened since last time you've been on the show. Three-Eye Atlas is a thing right now, and I don't know. Have you watched its progression, and how are you feeling? We're like, truthfully, what is this? The 27th? So we're literally we're less than a week away from it passing Mars, and we getting the best image that we could have gotten so far. How do you feel?
I don't know. I haven't had much time to look at it, but there's people that I do trust that I've caught because they're in my algorithm or my friends list or whatever. Avi Loeb, I really trust his take on things. He's very, very scientific and factual on things, and listening to him and his take on it threw me off a little bit. I was very surprised that he would even suggest that this could be anything other than a rock or something like that. He just suggested that it could be some type of interstellar ship, and they're estimating it left us home. If it is something, it left us home base 12-14 years ago. Like, how are they calculating all this stuff? Anyway, this is some crazy times, dude. This is I've said it before, and he just paused. There you are. Thought we lost you again, dude. I thought you left me. But I said it before, I'll say it again, and I mean this wholeheartedly right now more than anything. This is a prophetic time that we're in right now, and I'm not just guessing on that. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, it goes into a lot of different things. It just makes me think of a lot of other things that are going on and other things that people have said, and I'm just trying to connect dots. If there's any dots to even connect, this could literally be just a rock passing through, and it's just a really huge friggin' rock that's about to pass Mars, and we'll know within a week if that's the case or not, so we can start speculating on this. But my whole thing and the thing in we're not astrophysicists, we're not astronomers, we don't have telescopes looking at this thing to be able to give you the latest information on what this thing is. We're looking at reports just like everyone else and taking the information, looking at both sides of the conversation too, because there are astrophysicists, scientists that say it's just a comet and nothing big deal here. We have Avi Loeb, as you said, coming in saying on this Avi scale of 0 to 10, it's a 4 for him right now, and he lists the reasons why it's so anomalous. And even the latest thing I saw him say, literally, I think this was yesterday, where he said another anomalous thing is its size. It seems to be growing in size, whatever that means, and it could still at the end of the day be something normal or explainable. But I was talking to Josh Rutledge last week, and I was just saying, it's just, I think the cool part about it is that it's just part of the conversation, because it should be, because we know that we have UFOs currently visiting this planet now. We know we have non-human intelligence currently interacting with this planet now. And if we see something strange that we don't understand what it is coming from space at a trajectory that kind of brings it close to where we are, you got to wonder if those things are related. Are the things we see in the sky related to this object coming in? It's a yes or no answer, and we'll find out. And maybe it won't be, it'll just be a rock. or maybe we'll find out that it's something different or something that we weren't expecting. But you got to have your antennas up to just period, instead of, because and one other thing I'll say here real quick is that if Avi Loeb didn't step out and say anything, then all the other astrophysicists and scientists would just look at this as a rock. They may not have even mentioned it, or even if they did, they would have just said, hey, it's a comment, it'll be passed on this date, and then nothing more. We move on with our lives, they move on with theirs. But Avi kind of shook it up, saying, wait a minute, it's very strange, and that for that reason and other reasons, it could be alien intelligence.
Yeah, for
What do,
sure.
what do you think? I mean, it's only responsible to
It's
at least think about it.
absolutely. I mean, there's going back to the indigenous talk, like talking about their star knowledge. This is that we're dipping our toe into this conversation when this has been common knowledge that's been passed down for generations and generations and been witnessed by generations and generations. I mentioned earlier Chief Bear Cross. The reason I found him, he was on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. I don't even really listen to Aubrey that much anymore, but it popped across. It was another guy that I knew, Chase Iron Eyes was on there. Another Lakota guy was on the podcast. It's a friend of mine that I met at Standing Rock way back in the day during the protest days. But anyways, so I was listening to this podcast, and Chief Bear Cross was talking about a Lakota origin story I've never heard before. It's a origin story that was passed down from his grandfather, who went on Humblecha, which is like a vision quest, going up on spending 4 days out in nature, no food and water, sitting in one spot. And Humblecha translates into crying for a vision. So he was out there crying for a vision, and he said it's either on the third or fourth day. He tells a story on the Aubrey Marks podcast. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to in between Spaced Out Radio, if there's any breaks in Spaced Out Radio, listen to this podcast, guys. It will definitely change your life. Find it. It's Aubrey Marcus, Chief Bear Cross, and Chase Iron Eyes. It's just a month or so ago he put it out. But anyways, he talks going back to this vision. His grandpa shared this vision. He was out there, and this man come that something happened, and basically a UFO come down, and this man come out, and he come walking over to him, and his grandpa started talking to him. He said he asked him a few questions, but the one that really struck me was, and he's talking to this ET that landed on a spacecraft, come over, walking over to him. It's a little green man. He described it as like 3 or 4 feet tall. He's talking to him, but the ET's talking to him in Lakota. He's speaking his language, and they're talking back and forth in Lakota. And his grandpa said, "Where do I come from?" And the ET says, "Iataka e," which means that big rock right there. And he points up at a rock. He points at one of the in a constellation, the Big Dipper constellation. He said, "You come from that big rock right there, Iataka e." And then he left.
That's a cliffhanger. That's a cliffhanger, because when we look at our origin story, which potentially goes to Mars, I don't know if that's Itaka A. I don't know if that translates to Mars, but
Iataka A translates to that big rock right there. And he pointed out a rock in a constellation. The Lakotas believe that their origin story comes from a collapsed star in the Big Dipper. Okay. And there's other places that there's other tribes that they have different stars and different, but all these different tribes, my point being that all these different tribes, it's repeated over and over again. They come from different star systems. Like they claim that their visions, their dreamers, their visionaries, their prophets of their tribes have come forth and agreed that they come from these different star systems, not here. All of them are not from all of us. I believe all of us are not from here.
In a situation, in a scenario, if we look at 3-Eye Atlas, which people who just already think it's comet don't want to have this exercise, but just think if this thing ends up being, let's just say it is alien technology, it's a mothership, it's coming in, and it gets here, and then we find out that it's for this particular species, and we're related to them, or whatever the story is going to end up being. At the end of the day, or they're here to just devour our souls, or whatever it is that they might be here to do. I think it's just going to be a telling moment, and it just makes me think of stories like that, where it's like, what is our true origin? And as you may have heard, also recently in the last actually couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, NASA came out and kind of said that there was life. They confirmed ancient life on Mars, which is bacterial microbial life, but it just goes a step further to say that there was life there. And I feel like once we get there, once we land foot there, if we have shovels and we start digging, that we're going to see things that look very familiar. And truthfully, what if that was the case across the entire universe? What if life is very abundant in the solar system? Like, what if life is just a thing that definitely happens, everywhere? What if I've been thinking about that lately with all this stuff going on? What if it's everywhere?
I think it is. I think our understanding of what life is going to change, and I think, I heard Tom Whitmore, right?
Yep.
Tom. Okay. Yeah. I heard he was speaking about how, real disclosure, they're talking about they're reaching out to religious leaders and things like that. It's scientific, and it's deeply religious, because the implications of what's happening right now, just the consciousness moving forward, it's shifting consciousness, even having these discussions of alien ship may or may not coming. Like, you gotta break it down for what it is. Like, what it is at its base, this conversation of the Atlas comet coming, or aka mothership, whether or not it's a mothership or a comet is mute at this point, because it's bringing up this conversation that it may be, and that in itself is opening people's consciousness up, which in itself is moving the whole thing forward, because our own energy is moving this thing forward. I know I could tell you that for a fact, that we are manifesting this reality together. And the deeper these conversations go on a whole, this Atlas comet thing is it's mainstream news. There's mainstream news agencies talking about this may be an alien mothership. That conversation in itself is opening up the possibility for it to happen, because it's whether it's a rock or a highly technical spaceship, it's still in our minds. It's moving. People are going to bed at night having dreams that are influenced by these thoughts, and it's the story goes on and on and on, but it's our energy that's doing this, coupled with what it may or may not be.
And if you look around, as you said, on the national stage, it's been amazing me, truthfully, that they continue to talk to Ivy, because he said what he said, and it's like, okay, that's the initial statement, is he thinks it's 40% chance, okay, and you can't really go too much further than that until we actually get more data on it or see it, which won't happen till next week. So it's just been surprising me that they continue to host Avi Loeb on these national shows. and it's, maybe it's because they feel that there's some validity there, or maybe they just understand that just having the conversation is important, so they're open to doing that.
Mhm.
And when you see UFOs get talked about now, you know the ridicule is almost gone. The stuff that was there just only a few
Yeah.
years ago, where you couldn't get a newscast to talk about it without all the weird stuff, now they're kind of talking about it with a straight face. And sometimes I even see concern from some of these newscasters on, they're really trying to find out. They're asking Jeremy Corbell really good questions like, man, what is this? What are we, and I think that's kind of where we need to be at as a community, especially with the
Mhm.
news outlets. They need to be very, in tune with the subject and what's going on. This should be reported on just as much as who did what in Congress, or who did what, in
Even
another
more, it's the
country.
biggest story of history. It's the biggest story of history. Like, and anyone that's just to mention Chris real quick, anyone that has doubted Chris, like, the dude went to DC and made it happen in front of a bunch of people that he needed to make it happen. So whether it's him doing it or whether has some agreement, nonetheless, he's opened people's minds, he's opened people's hearts, and I commend him for that. He's my brother and I love him and I'll back him to the day I die. But for me, the real thing that I'm falling in love with now is seeing and knowing that there's an invisible force around you. It loves you, it supports you, and it wants the best for you. And all you have to do is accept love within your heart and start, going into faith more and more, whatever that faith looks like, whatever you call it. But there is something there and it's around us all the time, and it's magical. It's beautiful and it loves you. And I guarantee that's the truth. And I know that more now than I ever have.
Well, that's an awesome place to leave off for the night, man. Well, I gotta welcome you back, man, for sure. Glad to have you back. I'm sure everyone else out there is as well, and those on Team Replay will have a pleasant surprise when they get around to watching the show to see that Drew Banky's back on the hour 3. So a lot more conversations to come. We'll be back here tomorrow doing the exact same thing. We'll be talking more about Chris Bledsoe. I'm still, looking into. I know he was involved with it. I don't know specifically how it all played out, because I don't think he's even. I think he went on with Ross Coulthard recently. I need to get up to speed on that. We'll probably talk about that more tomorrow. Do you have anything you want to go ahead and leave everybody with before we get out of here?
No, just one thing more about Chris is I didn't even know he was on the Charlie Kirk show. He did like 15 or 20 minutes on Charlie Kirk show a few years ago, and he was talking about the connection between Christianity and what he does and everything. So it wasn't political or anything. I know there's a lot of that name even triggers things, but it was all about religion and the connection between UFOs and religion and stuff like that. So,
well, that's awesome stuff. We definitely want to thank our guest for tonight, Tom Whitmore, coming in, having an awesome conversation on government, UFOs. What's the connection? We talked to MJ12, a lot of great stuff. Make sure you guys go back and rewatch that if you need to. Also, thank Steve's Doctor Tells It Told Miss Person, Miss Reese, this guy right here who's back in the building, Drew Banky. We also want to thank you out there, the viewers, and that man you hear right there. Who is that? That is Ron Bumblefoot. He rocks us in and out of each and every show, letting us know to never say never again, because yes, the phenomenon is real, which means anything and everything is possible. If you enjoyed the show tonight, everything we talked about, make sure you hit the like button. Also, throw your horns up. We also want to thank our viewers online and listeners on terrestrial radio and digital platforms, wherever and whenever in the world you may be watching from. We appreciate you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that, Drew Banky?
we own the night.
We own the night. Remember, the show is copyrighted Bigfoot Media Ventures Limited, and SOR Space Out Radio. It's been a pleasure serving you once again as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is Drew Banky, if I could point right. That's Drew Banky. For all you space travelers out there, this is not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, you can best believe as we go off air for the night, we will be back doing the same thing, same time, same place. Make sure you're there. We would love to see you back. Have a great rest of your night, guys. We're out of here. Take care. All right, we are clear. And before I end the podcast side, I need to do a quick little redo my intro real quick for the edit I'm going to have to do later tonight. So let me do that real quick for continuity's sake. Let me get us back where we were. And all right, let's give this a shot real quick. Segment. Okay. All right, let me do this real quick, guys. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are back half of hour one with our guest, Tom Whitmore. Remember, we're talking MJ12, UFOs and government. What's the connection? If you have any questions, ask those in hour two. Right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. And also, if you missed the conversation this far in, jump in the archives. Absolutely free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. Getting back into the show. All right, that works. That works.
I was sold.
Man,
I was sold.
Hey, it took you back in time real quick.
That was good. I was like, whoa, what just happened? Did I
Exactly.
I didn't know if I ate some mushrooms I didn't know about. Never know.
Glad I could do that for you, man. But I am and we're on an hour earlier now, right? So
yeah, it's great.
Let me go ahead.
I prayed for this.
That's all right. Great. Well, it happened, and we are definitely on, and I know it helps out. It helps. I know you have to feel better about that. And any East Coast guests that we get here coming up, they'll feel better about that. It should make things easier. It's feeling good. Waiting for feedback from the viewers to make sure they have been here on time. So it seems like they're okay with it. No real hiccups. So this will be it going forward.
They know what's up. They know to be here.
And we're in and out, right? It's 10 o'clock West Coast, and we're out of here. And you can go do other things. We still got a couple hours left in your day.
Yeah.
And you can get to the family. You can go lay down with the babies and all that. Reasonable hour. And it all works out.
Yeah.
So glad to have you back though, man.
Yeah, man. It's I've been it's just been a lot of work, especially this past month. We moved into the place at the beginning of the month. We started renting here and started the moving process and everything. Because we was really confident that this last buyer was going to go through. They had a lot of money down and all this stuff, so we just knew that it was all going to go through. So we just been basically moving for the past month, and for the past couple days, we just been upgrading things. I've been upgrading the solar, got new batteries, and new solar panels. I just got done with like 2 hours before the show, and I come in here and started doing my checks and everything, and found out the Wi-Fi was not what it was supposed to be back here. Yeah. So I was fighting that all the way up until about 30 minutes into the show. I finally got everything worked out, and but we're set to ready and rock, man. The office is ready now, so
well, you already know. You already know it's like I said. Oh, also, and maybe I'll bring this up tomorrow. I'll wait till tomorrow. But we just hit
What? You can't
year
do
2.
that.
I know, but I want to make sure we do it in front of everybody. But I'll just say real quickly, we hit year 2 here on After Hours, so we're celebrating the anniversary. So maybe we'll do something special tomorrow, with 2 years at the head of this show and the recreation and everything that I had to take the show through, man. I did. If you go back to when I had to take this show over, there's been a lot of work that I've had to do to kind of redo this, redo that, to get to where we're at here today. So I want to celebrate that, and maybe we'll talk about that during breaks tomorrow night. But yeah, 2 years right here, Space Out Radio After Hours, and it just feels like day one again. And that's the beautiful thing. That's how I know that we're going places, because it still feels like day one. And still feels like we have not accomplished anything. And that we've accomplished something, but not what we want. And that there's still so much more to go for. So it's we got a lot of work to do, Drew Becky.
Yeah. No, I was, it's funny, haven't been here for the past couple months handling life, but it's funny. I seen a post come up, your memories come up on Facebook, and it was like a couple weeks ago, but it was a post of the very first, like the official announcement of me being on the After Hours show permanently.
That's been about a year.
It's been over a year. Like I've been, I know I've been off for a little while, but it's been a year of me doing this, and it hasn't been totally consistent, but it's been an honor working with you and watching your growth and your interview growth, and everything is so much better than what it was. Not that there's anything wrong with it in the beginning, but just watching that growth and seeing someone come into their rhythm, of like, you can kind of, each interviewer, if you listen to a lot of podcasts or anything like that, they have a rhythm. Rogan has his own rhythm. Sean Ryan has his own rhythm. Theo has his own rhythm, and you have come into your own rhythm as well. So it's I'm just honored to be part of it, man. And I'm glad to be back. And let's do some work, because the awakening's here. It's not about. It's more about the magic that's around you than what's in the sky, and that's what I leave it with tonight.
Great words, Drew Bankey. Appreciate you so much, man. Glad you're back. And yes, we have work to do. We're finna kick some butt going forward, and we're gonna start. We started tonight, but we're gonna just keep it going tomorrow night. So you guys make sure you're right here, same time, same place. Earlier start time, 7 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time, new time slot for After Hours. And anyone, you've suggested someone tonight, which I wrote down, Delilah. So I did get that name, Jordani, I think is who she said. But anyone else that you guys want to see on the show, please message me or leave it in the comments so we can go ahead and reach out and make that thing happen. Outside of that, we're going to get up out of here, guys. Have a great rest of your night. We want retribution. That's how we close out every show, and it's not going to change tonight. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.